The story begins by showing a priest and his altar boy who are preparing for an event called Mass, which will soon be held. After this event, the priest again orders the child to store the wine left over from the event in the cellar. After he has succeeded in storing the wine into place, suddenly, seeing the child so panicked, as well as the sound of commotion from below, made the priest finally become curious and decided to find out who was behind it all, which in the end appeared an astral creature with a monastery appearance, with glowing eyes, and a really very scary face. And here's the Nun 2. Next, the story will focus on a beautiful nun in the first Nun film, named Irene, where she has a close friend in the convent named Sister Deborah. Different from Irene, Deborah is a nun who is problematic, often makes a fuss, plus she who didn't want to go to confession, so her credibility as a nun began to be questioned.
Sister Deborah? But we ran into some trouble down there. I think you've confessed enough.
He is Maurice, Irene's first love, who once saved her life, when she was on the verge of death in fighting the demon Valak. Because Maurice is an explorer and Irene is a nun, their love will definitely be one-sided, so Maurice decides to go back on an adventure from one place to another. This time Maurice decided to stay in one of the dormitories, as a marbot, because he had the aim of dating one of the teachers in the dormitory, and with Maurice's good looks, the teacher named Kate immediately fell in love with him, so the two of them always make time to greet each other, even when they are very busy.
Hard at work already?
Always.
Kate is a widow, has a daughter named Sophie. Even though she is the daughter of a teacher, she is not free from bullying from 3 delinquents who always ruin her beautiful days at the hostel.
Proposing to your boyfriend, little Sophie.
A few moments later, when a food delivery person was storing some food in the dormitory warehouse, he accidentally saw Maurice's very strange and scary behavior. Then the atmosphere in the room suddenly changed, after seeing the figure of a very scary nun, and returning to Sister Irene, who was sleeping, she was approached by Maurice, who came into her dream to ask for help. The next day, Irene truly had a visitor from the Vatican, who asked her to go investigate a pattern of deaths leading to the devil Valak, which is believed to still be alive and will really become a threat to humanity if it is not stopped immediately.
Grass, Austria. Notice a pattern. It's moving west across.
The church would like you to investigate. But in that abbey, sister...
Even though he strongly refused after his trauma at St. Carta, in the end he still went to investigate, accompanied by Nurse Deborah, who wanted to find his identity and a miracle in the field.
It becomes the blood of Christ because we believe. Why? The entire convent of nuns died facing this.
During break time, Sophie was trapped by 3 delinquent students, by entering a ship that the principal was strictly forbidden to enter, where the 3 children asked Sophie to play a staring game with the demon. If he looks away when looking at each other, then the devil will change into the form of a goat and kill him. When Sophie realizes that it is a trap, suddenly arriving at the Tarascon church where Valak burned a priest, Irene suddenly had a vision of a child delivering a rosary belonging to the priest to her. Irene asked who were the people living in the church at the time of the incident. The nun explained that there was an altar boy and a handyman who used to travel around the world called Frankie. Hearing this, Irene then realized that the incident was starting to make sense. It was Maurice which became a platform for Valak to continue to spread terror and led him to several places to commit murder.
Who's this Frenchy guy?
After learning of Maurice's heroic action in saving her child from bullying, Kate then expressed her thanks, which turned into a question about the reason why the principal closed the chapel, which made the students curious about him. Apparently the principal used to have a child who was an altar boy, where he died in that room after the enemy landed several bombs during the war.
Woman. But she's been very good to us.
And I should get back to my work.
After receiving a mandate not to spy on her mother again, Sophie accidentally saw Maurice become strange after chasing away several crows that approached him, and received a call from his mother who had just left him, but when he continued to follow the call from his mother all the way to the top floor, suddenly, while waiting for Deborah to book a hotel room for the two of them, Irene decided to stay outside while solving the puzzle of the case she was currently working on. In her solitude, suddenly a group of children passed her while playing ball. One of the children was a witness key in the burning incident of a priest in Tarascon, but because he was playing, the child decided to follow his friends, so Irene was forced to run to get this information. Like a hallucination, the group of children immediately disappeared, leaving only one of them to lead Irene somewhere. After running quite far, she arrived at a place filled with dozens of magazines, and suddenly one by one the pages of the magazines started to open, and made a picture that was already familiar to her eyes, and then something made Irene distracted from the magazine, suddenly. In her unconsciousness, Irene is shown executing Saint Lucy when she was about to be burned alive. Before that happened, Saint Lucy gave her a relic containing her own eyes as a guide for Irene to fight the evil demon. On the same night when the principal was praying for his dead son, he suddenly heard a strange sound from inside the chapel, which turned out to be Maurice, who was frozen right in front of the chapel door.
Maurice, I don't know.
After Maurice left, the principal actually heard the child's voice calling him from inside, so he decided to enter it in the hope of being able to meet the child who had died a long time ago. But who would have thought, in the room, he actually met the child, who kept asking him to play, so that the principal got carried away in the game, which without realizing it had become part of the devil VALAKS bullshit, and the next morning, Kate saw that the chapel door was open and immediately became curious, so she entered and found the headmaster's body lying lifeless. Returning to Irene and Deborah, where Irene finally understands the meaning of her vision last night, Valak's true goal is to look for the relic of Saint Lucy, in order to maximize her power with Maurice as her intermediary.
It's going to kill him when it's done. It seems so familiar, but...
After getting the rosary from the altar boy, they went to the Catholic archives to ask about the meaning of the symbol engraved in the priest's rosary, which was burned by the evil devil. When they arrived at the office, with the help of a librarian, Irene finally understood what the symbol was as the symbol of the Saint Lucy family, whose descendants were slaughtered by the demon Valak in order to find a relic containing the eye of Saint Lucy to revive her power, which was previously taken by God, because in fact, Valak was once an angel who was expelled, after rebelling against God.
The eyes of St. Lucy. It's a demon, and I'm just a...
It wants that power back.
The librarian also told him that Saint Lucy's relics were in a monastery where her descendants died long ago, and that place had now been turned into a hostel, less than an hour away.
It's a boarding school. Relic can do. And the same goes for the demon.
While on the trip, Irene told Deborah about her family. Her mother used to have the same ability as her. Her father considered this ability strange, so he thought her mother had a disorder and sent her to a mental hospital. Meanwhile, Maurice, Kate, and Sophie were enjoying the evening dancing. When it was getting late, Maurice suddenly felt dizzy, accompanied by the appearance of a cross on the back of his neck, when he saw a Valak painting displayed on the wall, suddenly. During his escape, he met Nurse Irene again and explained that the devil had returned. Irene, who understood the situation better, asked him to stay away from Kate and Sophie, saying that the devil was inside him. After hearing this, suddenly Maurice is taken over by the devil, and after successfully overthrowing Maurice, the four of them immediately went to the chapel to look for the relic in question, where those who didn't have a clue were confused about where the relic was kept.
It's the devil. It's the devil. Just there.
Seeing Sophie pensively looking at the picture of the goat made Irene realize that that was the clue they were looking for, so she told Deborah to light the eye to find the exact spot where the relic was hidden.
The eyes of St. Lucy.
Meanwhile, the other students started to wake up after hearing a noise from upstairs, so one of them dared to look out. He was shocked by the figure of a devil in the form of a goat who was ready to appear at him. Luckily, Deborah arrived on time and managed to save him.
What is that thing?
And they tried to go to the principal's office, where they were greeted by the principal who had recently died, who in the end, Deborah had to take them back to a safe place, in order to avoid the principal and also the goat that had been terrorizing him. Sophie, who brought the relic with her, had to be hunted down by Maurice, so a chase ensued between the two of them. With the help of the relic itself, Sophie managed to keep Maurice out of reach, giving Irene time to quickly follow him there, and just as they met, Maurice suddenly came from behind, so Irene was forced to fight him using the power of the relic. Think Maurice had died along with the Valak he had defeated. Irene, who truly loved Maurice, couldn't hold back her tears while mourning his passing, but suddenly, the strongest demon had regained his strength, so that night, everyone there had to experience terror in each different place, while Irene received different treatment by being burned alive like St. Lucy, and also her descendants who also suffered like her.
Save me, O God, by thy name.
Returning to the situation between life and death, Irene finally realized that she was a descendant of St. Lucy, so she immediately invited Deborah to pray. After being convinced that God's miracles really existed, after the prayer had been recited, suddenly, in the end, Valak immediately caught fire after receiving a spray of wine. The goat returned to its place, and Maurice was saved along with Valak, who had disappeared. In the end, everything ended happily with Maurice apologizing to Kate and Sophie for almost causing them to die because of it.